Strange things are afoot at the Circle K.
That kid is back on the escalator again.
Ain't gonna hurt.
Is my boomstick!
Game over, man. Game over.
Welcome to the Bargain Bin. He is your host, Ben Mason.
And he is your co-host, Sandry Luketic. And today we're talking about 2015's Bloodsucking Bastards. We assume if you're listening to the episode, you've already watched the movie.
Are you going to do your usual thing where you poke and prod and ask me how I thought the movie was?
No, I honestly thought you were just going to launch into an angry tirade over how much you hated it.
So every single episode you slowly poke. Hey, well, what did you think? And then this time you don't? I mean, it's about setting expectations, man.
Okay, fine. Sandro, what did you think of this movie?
I loved it.
No shit.
There's no punchline
Really?
coming. I loved it. I thought it was like the perfect mix of like Office Space meets Shaun of the Dead splash in vampires.
Yep, that's exactly how I describe it to people. It's Office Space with vampires.
It was fantastic. I would have difficulty finding something I didn't enjoy about it. I think this episode will probably end up being a little bit boring because I don't have anything to really nitpick.
It'll be Demon Knight all over again.
Well, even with Demon Knight, I had a few things to nitpick, like continuity errors, little things.
Yeah.
Stuff that didn't ruin the movie, but like stuck out to me. In this one, I think that the method of going for almost a parody kind of alleviated any sort of openings for continuity errors, because you're just like, well, that's what it is, right? Like it's going for a ridiculousness with it, right? Like, there's so many scenes where Tim is almost addressing the audience or addressing the plot, like breaking the fourth wall, but not quite. You know what I mean? And it's very clear that they're going for a particular feel here, so that there isn't really anything you can nitpick.
Yeah, and I have an odd thought about why that is. The movie was written by members of an LA improv group called Dr. God. Well, not all of the writers. Some of the writers were members of the group. And I honestly think that being put on the spot and having to come up with something immediately that's funny, that will get a good reaction, is better training than just sitting and memorizing lines. Because I have a feeling a lot of the lines in this movie were improvised.
It's very possible. How do you want to address this one? Like, I really don't even know where to begin.
Well, how about we begin with some of the ratings I found?
Sure.
Not many people like this movie, man.
What?
On IMDb, it has a 5.7. Metacritic is 50. Rotten Tomatoes had 67% on the tomato meter, and the audience scores 48%.
Did you happen to notice or get a feel for any of the people's feedbacks or comments as to why they didn't like it?
A lot of it is our complaint about other horror comedies, that there wasn't enough of either, and it didn't mix well. Some people loved the humor, some people loved the horror, but it seemed like a lot of people didn't like both of them.
Maybe there's a difference there in perception, because I didn't view this one as a horror.
Agreed.
Like,
this is a comedy with horror elements.
Exactly. Like, if I went into this expecting comedy, horror comedy, whatever you would call it, I would probably be disappointed. But I went into it expecting a comedy. And I almost felt like the horror aspects, the vampire elements, were just a driving force for the comedy, and some of the, I thought, commentary about essentially how corporate life is a leech on you.
Oh yeah,
but
even jokes about the office itself, how there's almost no sunlight that gets in, so vampires can be in there no problem, and how depressing that is for the workers there, the human workers.
That was a great part.
Yeah, there's some really good commentary in this movie which is surprising because it really is over the top in many places.
It is very over the top. But, I mean, that was part of its charm. I will say, now that I think about it, there was one thing I didn't like about the movie, which was too over the top. Mm-hmm. And it was the character Mike, was it?
Yeah.
But luckily,
he was just annoying.
He was just annoying. But luckily, he was the first victim. So, got that out of the way pretty quickly.
Yeah, that was a nice touch, too. I'm pretty sure that was completely intentional.
What you mean, like, build up the character to an unlikable level so that when he gets offed, you're fine with it?
Yeah, because at that point you're kind of cheering on the direction of the movie. For me, the first thing I can say about the movie as you watch it is a nitpick. And it is probably the worst opening song and credit sequence for a movie like this.
Okay. Elaborate.
The music is too jarring. The editing for the credit sequence is too polished compared to the rest of the film. And I feel like if you showed the opening credit sequence to somebody who had never seen the movie before, they would be completely uninterested in following through with the rest of the film.
I didn't really think about it at the time, but now that you mention it, when I did first start the movie and I watched that intro sequence, it did kind of throw me off on what I was expecting, what I was about to get into.
Yeah.
But luckily...
I completely...
Sorry. Luckily, that passes very quickly, right?
It does. But I hadn't seen the movie in a long time, so when I threw it on for a rewatch for this episode, I sighed. I was like, if anybody tries to watch this movie before listening to the episode as recommended, they're probably going to be disappointed until like 2.5 minutes goes by.
See, and the thing is, it would have worked better as an ending sequence. When you've already gotten a feel for the movie, you can get some of the references. Like, the part of the intro where it shows the Kelly Clarkson tickets.
Yep.
In my mind, I'm like, what the heck is this? But then when you watch the movie, if you saw this during, like, say, the end credits, you'd be like, oh, hey, that's a nice little, callback, as well as, like, a humorous touch on something that happened in the movie. But when you're putting that at the beginning and people don't quite know what to expect from the movie, it does kind of throw them off a little bit. Luckily, it does pass, like you said, in like 2 minutes you get into the movie and you're kind of fine, right?
Yeah, and honestly, the best way they could come back from that intro is starting with that opening shot of Joey Kern covered in blood.
Yeah. I'm not the biggest fan, unless it's done well, of those types of things where they start it and then the first half of the movie is leading up to that moment. Actually, well more than first half. Almost the entirety of the movie.
Yeah.
Because it does, again, it sets an expectation, right?
It does.
You can see how horror fans, after that intro, let's just forget the intro didn't exist. They see the first scene, this guy's covered in blood. He's saying that this is like the grossest thing he's ever seen. That probably sets a bit more of an expectation on the horror side of it. And then it goes 2 days previously, and the tone of the movie is drastically different from what you might have been expecting. I don't know if it was meant to be some sort of red herring or kind of just a psych out. Like, maybe there was a reason for it, but it definitely could have just started at the beginning of the movie, right after that scene. I don't think it would have suffered for it.
Yeah, it wasn't necessary. Honestly, it works a lot better on a rewatch, too. So I'm not sure who made that decision. But, I mean, it doesn't really hinder the movie. It's just kind of unnecessary. But I do like Joey Kern a lot. So having him on screen at any point makes me happy.
He was my favorite character in the movie.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
And I really did... Oh, go.
It's weird that the comedic relief was one of the more fleshed out characters.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I thought he was going to be the main character. It feels like they try to push you towards Evan being the main character.
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of where the focus is. But like to me, it felt like it was Tim. He kind of put and kept the whole thing together.
He really did. I mean, Evan obviously has the main storyline, and I think Fran Kranz did a great job in the role too. But I think they've both done enough comedy, even comedy horror, that they just really worked well together as best friends.
I don't know how I feel about Evan as a character.
Oh, really?
Like, he is supposed to be your main character. There's supposed to be like a little bit of... I'm guessing you're supposed to feel a little sorry for him.
More than a little sorry.
Because of his situation. But then I'm looking at it and I'm like, so he was dating Amanda, and I'm going to butcher this pronunciation. Was it Zabeth?
Zabeth, yeah.
Zabeth was...
Or Zabeth. Zabeth it is.
Zabeth was interested in him. And I'm like, why are these women into this guy? He's a bit of a jerk to them.
Yeah, but he's also a super nice guy. He's only a jerk when he's frustrated with the whole Amanda putting a memo out letting people know about the relationship status.
Well, he's kind of a jerk to Zabeth the entire... Like, not that they have many, but every time they interact, like, she's kind of, like, flirting with him, and he's just like, get out of here.
I don't think he's being a jerk so much as he's being completely oblivious and self-absorbed. Like, he's not intentionally trying to make her feel bad.
I mean, it came off as jerkish to me, and like,
okay.
Enough that it stood out in my mind to be like, why are all these women interested in him? Like, maybe it is like a character flaw, where it's like, yeah, when he gets frazzled, he doesn't know how to react, and while he's still a nice guy, he kind of fumbles a bit of it. But it came off as not fumbly to me, it came off as jerky.
Well, see, I actually really empathize with the character, because in my life, I've been in scenarios like that, where you push yourself to a point where you're on the verge of success, and then something goes wrong, and you're stunted all of a sudden, and you just can't get yourself going again. And it seems like that is a recurring theme in his life.
Yeah, I mean, if we want to look at it that way, though, the situation with Amanda, he did it to himself.
We have to talk about that scene, though. That makes me laugh so hard every time I see it.
Okay.
Just the response to Amanda telling Evan, I love you.
No.
And then the awkward, no.
What kind of a reaction is that?
I don't know, man. It's perfect. It's a perfect reaction.
They don't even try to justify it in the movie. Like, at no point does he say, like, oh, I just didn't know what to say back. Like, they harp on him a few times, like, saying, like, you know, you could have called her a bitch and that would have been better. But they never
it's the one place you could have yelled fire.
Yeah, but they never actually get into... Like, he gets apologetic about it, and he does later tell her he loves her, but they never explain why his reaction was that. Even a simple, oh, you caught me off guard.
Yeah. Well, these aren't realistic characters. Let's state that right now.
I'm pretty sure that they're fairly realistic.
I don't know, man. I haven't really met many people like that in my life outside of, like, Amanda. I wish I did, because they're hilarious. But I would never want them working for me.
I think we can agree that the security guard is the most realistic.
Yeah, right. Frank. That actor did such a great job with that character.
David F. Park?
Yeah.
He was...
No. Dave Park was Dave. Frank is Marshall Givens.
Thank you. Sorry, I got that mixed up. Marshall Givens was fantastic, but I don't know, like, I almost feel like him, like Frank and Tim, don't fit into this movie. And that's kind of why they're so enjoyable. Because they're almost they're almost like representative of the audience in the movie.
Oh yeah, definitely. It's almost like caricatures of people that would be in these professions.
I don't even mean just like of the professions, but I mean like Max is turning everyone in the office into vampires. I know, right? And it's like, yeah, that's something that the audience saw, and like they later show these scenes where it's happening. But like, what character in that situation would be that calm about it and still coming into work? But they're meant to almost represent like the audience's foreshadowing. Like, yeah, we know we are in their role going through this experience with them.
Yeah, it definitely, I don't know, it puts a fun spin on the characters, like the self-awareness. I kind of get what you're saying about representing the audience, but it feels like this is supposed to be like the punchline of any bit of humor is Evan does a setup, or then Tim nails it, or Frank does a setup and Tim nails it. It's like, even when it's not the dialogue, just the way the film's edited to show like when everything's happening in the background, or vampires are turning people or killing people, and you've got Tim sitting in his car listening to music, eating a sandwich.
Yeah, but I mean,
but then like calling back to it later and having the camera pan left, and you see Frank's there just drinking Red Bull next to him.
How many of those do you drink a day? However many it takes. But like, think of it, like they're in the elevator scene, right, with Frank and Tim and Evan, and they're getting ready for battle or whatever, right? And Frank is giving them like exposition on how to defeat vampires. And they're like, how do you know that? And after giving some BS about security guards or whatever, he's just like, yeah, I read some stuff on Wikipedia. Like, that's totally something the audience would do.
Yeah, there's some weird dialogue in that scene. He's like, I think I've been a security guard this long and haven't killed a few vampires. Don't get this patch without taking down some puncture monkeys or something. I was like,
But that's what I mean. In this world, they don't know about vampires prior to this, we would anticipate. Yeah. But he read it on Wikipedia, right? Like, when? Like, this is what I mean. Like, this is the audience. They're just kind of gathering information as they go and representing our kind of like, not omnipotent, but outside view of things that we would know that other characters wouldn't, because we see all the scenes, whereas characters can only see the scenes that they're in, theoretically.
Yeah, that makes sense. I'll go along with that.
But I mean, either way, it was enjoyable to me. Like, even, like, that scene where, you know, Tim reveals to him, yeah, vampires, I know, right? In my mind, I'm like, then why are you coming into work?
I know, especially where he's such a slacker in the first place.
Yeah, and he's like, oh, I gotta get a sale, or this is gonna be bad. Like, what? Just don't go in!
Obviously, it's fear of not having to find another job. Gotta listen to what Max says.
What did you think of Max?
I love the character of Max because he is written so well and portrayed so well that you can't not hate him. He's just a jerk.
Very hateable, but the actor, Pedro Pascal, does a great job of it.
I would never want to see anybody else play that role.
Really? Because
yeah, he's perfect.
I think the two actors that he's the love child of would be both fine in that role, too.
Do tell.
Does he not look like Nathan Fillion and Jeremy Renner had a love child?
No.
Come on. Look at the movie again.
I can see a bit of Fillion, but not Jeremy Renner, no.
It's the nose and the jawline for Renner. I'm telling you, he looks like it. He looked a lot less like it in things like Game of Thrones when he had like some facial hair and some scruffiness. But in this one, he walked in and I'm like, huh, are they brothers?
No, I don't see the Renner thing at all. Fillion for sure, but I still would not want either of those two to play the character of Max.
Get out of here.
Pedro all the way.
He was fantastic. I don't think that they could have cast that better.
And his comedic timing, I was not expecting. Like, with him and Andrew standing in the office doorway during the final fight scene.
Oh, yeah, like sometimes you have to know when to delegate and when to...
Yeah. Do you want me to jump in here?
No.
No, I want you to learn how to delegate.
But that's part of the humor for me, is just how many characters treated this like just an everyday occurrence. Like,
I feel like everybody in this movie really had fun.
Oh, yeah. I don't think anybody on the cast didn't enjoy themselves.
Even the janitor, Jerry.
I love how if you look up the cast listing on Wikipedia is where I looked it up the first time. I haven't checked IMDb. But they literally have him listed as janitor. They don't even put Jerry. Like,
it's bad on IMDb too.
Is it?
Yeah.
And that's part of the joke too. Like, they're like, "Oh, you," and he's like, "Yeah, vampire. I know. Like, I've been a vampire since day one. You guys didn't notice? I followed you through the office."
You don't even know my name, do you?
That was a good one.
When they're in the office, we killed the janitor. You popped Jerry? Ah,
what's his name?
Jerry.
What about
Loved
Ted?
it. I don't know how I feel about Ted. I think he was probably one of the weakest.
But he also had one of the smaller roles, in my opinion.
Yeah. I mean, I think that the actor, Joel Murray, did everything he really could with the character. I don't think it was really written to have any weight to it. He was more so just to help progress some of the story.
I think he did a good job, though. I mean, he seemed kind of like the corporate yes man, bumbly kind of manager who knew what was going on, but kind of didn't know what was going on.
Yeah. He did have one really funny line, too, though.
Okay.
When everything's been said and done, and he acknowledges that, he knew they were vampires. And Evan's trying to convince him that Max is going to kill him, too. He's like, no, he's just waiting to turn me until the end. It's going to be special with the candles. That made me laugh. Because there's like just that weird eye roll from everybody.
Yeah.
That he's completely oblivious to what's actually happening.
He kind of had to know.
Yeah.
I don't know how much more I can say about the cast. Like, I thought it was stellar.
Yeah, well, I mean, you got Fran Kranz as Evan, who I really enjoyed, both the actor and character. Loved him from Cabin in the Woods and You Might Be the Killer.
You have to reference Cabin in the Woods again?
Mm-hmm.
Terrible movie.
Pedro Pascal, who I believe the first thing I actually saw him in was Game of Thrones. He's great as Max. That
was the first thing I saw him in. And even though you don't see his face, he's fantastic in The Mandalorian, too.
Yeah. And honestly, when I saw this after I had started watching Game of Thrones, and I didn't recognize him as the same guy.
No, he definitely does look different. I had to look it up when I saw him. Like, when I first started watching this movie, I recognized him. I'm like, I know this guy. I've seen him. And I had to look it up and be like, oh, he was Oberon, and he's the Mandalorian. And then you see it. But I think it's the clean-shavenness, the suit. You don't see him normally in that type of attire, or at least from what I've seen. And he cleans up nice.
Yeah. Joey Kern, who, I mean, I think the first time I ever saw him was in the opening scene of Super Troopers.
Yeah, I obviously didn't recognize him from that. I had to go and look it up. And I couldn't think of anything else I'd seen him in. And I saw that he was
another
in that
cabin movie, Cabin Fever.
I don't think I've seen that one.
It's a good time. I really enjoy that movie. It's the first big movie by Eli Roth.
Fair. But I was disappointed that I hadn't seen him in anything else other than that Super Troopers, which is minor at best. Because I thought he was fantastic. I'd like to see him in a little bit more comedy-type roles. I don't know.
Yeah, me too. I saw him in a movie that it's a comedy, supposedly. It made me laugh twice, and it's just because of him. But called the Sasquatch Gang, with Oh my god, how am I forgetting his name? Justin Long, sorry.
You'll be surprised to know that I have not heard of that one.
Yeah, no, I don't think most people have. Do you know Emma Fitzpatrick from anything? No, me neither. She looks very familiar, though. Justin Ware as Andrew.
He was
I
good.
thought he was a great supporting character. He's also, I thought he was one of the writers. If he's not one of the writers, he was a member of Dr. God.
How many of them were?
The director, Brian James O'Connell. He was, of course, Justin Ware, and I think there was one more. Yeah. We've been over Marshall Gibbons as Frank. What do you think of David Park as Dave? Do you remember Dave?
No.
Dave was going around trying to collect the money for the sports pools.
Oh, yeah. I mean, he played the role well. He was unlikable.
Had some of the best lines in the movie, though.
He definitely did.
My cat has a cleft palate and is allergic to some kinds of air.
I don't know what they were trying to do with that. Like,
I think they're just trying to show how awkward he is in the office and how he's not really, like, confident because he keeps asking people for the money that they owe him and they keep dodging him, so he just asks for it. He doesn't go after it, and then you see the character flip after he becomes a vampire, which actually had some of the coolest vampire effects, in my opinion, with the crazy long fingers he had.
We'll get back to the vampire effects.
Okay.
Because I do want to talk about that a little bit more, but I'd like you to finish going over your cast stuff.
Those were the main ones I wanted to talk about. We already covered how much we disliked Mike.
Yeah. Although it looks like he was part of Dr. God.
That makes perfect sense.
What was his name again?
The character or the actor?
The actor.
I don't even know how to pronounce his last name. Neil Garguilo?
Yep. I'm looking at the Dr. God website here. Him and Justin Ware are listed as members.
Yeah. So I guess having that familiarity as well with the actors, kind of like the guys from Super Troopers and Beerfest. Broken Lizard. Yeah. Like having that familiarity with years of working with each other, your improv skills are spot on. You can read other people, you can go off script and just throw things back and forth at each other.
Oh, sorry. Dave F. Park. Never mind. Go ahead. Sorry.
No, that's pretty much it. The chemistry between the actors as a whole, I was very impressed with. I found most of the acting incredibly strong, and I was looking into it a little bit because I was trying to figure out what the budget was. I couldn't find that anywhere online, but what I did find out is how they were casting people. And normally, you get people through your casting agencies, through your casting director. That's their position, of course. But some people came through the casting director. Some people came through the producers who knew them from other productions. Some people were just friends with the director, and they knew that everybody would work together so well. And I think they did a great job with the casting.
Absolutely. I did also want to mention Dave F. Park was also part of Dr. God. I don't want to miss that and then sound like a jerk.
I did have one slight nitpick. This is going off the topic of the actors. The one joke and the constant throughout the film that I thought fell really flat was the lighting joke. And as more and more people turned into vampires, the lights got dimmer and dimmer. It didn't really work for me because the movie starts off dark as is, at least with my DVD copy.
Yeah, but I thought that was more just like the camera work than what was meant to be the actual lighting in the office. It did come together a little bit when they made the comment about how these fluorescent lights vampires can survive. But I didn't look at it that way when it happened.
Okay, no, that's just my interpretation then, but I thought it didn't work and was unnecessary to even reference.
Fair. Okay, let's get back to the vampire effects.
Mhm.
I think that one of the best things that they could have done is keep it to a minimum.
Oh yeah, definitely.
It probably helped with budget, makeup time, things like that. But it also showed that the movie didn't need to show them as vampires like for the entire time, because they've built up that mystique and they've built up the story in a way that if it just shows up here and there,
Mm-hmm.
it has a bigger impact.
And honestly, the lighting probably did help with that too, because if they were incredibly well lit, you'd probably see some of the edges and flaws in the makeup. But keeping it dark, keeping it in the shadows, you catch glimpses of it and see it actually does look quite good.
Yeah, and it really felt like a less is more situation. So much of like vampire movies, they try to go over the top, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
This one, it's like, okay, the actual vampire effects are minimal. We change up their faces, give them the teeth. Dave did have the fingers, but only Dave, if I recall.
Yep, only Dave.
And then they also kept it to a minimum number of scenes. So that when you did see it, you didn't have a chance to pick it apart. You didn't have a chance to see any flaws. But it's the biggest compliment I can give it is that the story carried it without the need of it.
Yep. That was a very well-paced, well-written, well-thought-out story.
Yeah, see, this is why I'm having difficulty talking about this movie, because all I have is good things to say.
Well, say another good thing. Did you have a favorite scene?
Favorite scene is gotta be the one where they reveal that Tim wasn't alone in all those scenes. Like, when they go down and Frank is just like, vampires, I know, right? And it's like, okay, we're rehashing that joke. I get it. But to me, it was the cleverness of how they filmed the scenes when Tim was there, keeping the camera purposely. Like, I'm sitting there thinking, like, that's not really centered, but, like, it doesn't look wrong. Because, like, take the car scene, for example.
Mm-hmm.
They don't have it centered because Tim is off to the side because it's showing the dumpster in the background, which is supposed to signify where that temp was getting offed, right?
Yeah, it showed great forethought for the reveal later.
Exactly. But it had the dual purpose that it doesn't make you question why the character is not centered, because you're thinking, okay, they're showing the focus on the garbage can to kind of show the timeline of, okay, this is when this happened. But then it's also perfect for when you do it the second time and you pan over and you see that Frank is there. And that sequence was my favorite, just because it showed how much forethought, how much things came together, and just how well all of that was done in general.
Oh, yeah. And I'd say the best of that reveal was Tim in the basement watching as he's eating his burger or sandwich and the pickles fall out and he just looks down. And then when they show it again with Frank, you see the pickles fall, he looks down, and this hand comes from off screen holding a napkin.
Yeah, it's perfect, because you're also like, oh, he could be looking down at where the napkin is being handed to him, right?
Yeah.
I thought it was fantastic. I can't think of a negative, because again, any of the negatives, it's a parody movie. Like, I'm watching it and I'm like, okay, there's clearly more thought put into the parody and commentary of how the head HR lady is one of the most inappropriate members of the office and should be the one that's governing that. And Tim is making like lesbian jokes about her haircut, and she's just fine with it, which in another company, like, that's not happening with the HR person. But I don't see that as a nitpick or a story flaw, because clearly they're parodying that.
Yeah. Yeah. There's so many great things to say about this movie. It's also probably one of the most quotable comedies I've ever seen.
I don't know about that. Like,
dude, so many good ones.
There's a good number of them, but I wouldn't say it's one of the most. Like,
well, it's no Airplane, okay, but it's still really good.
I don't know, man. I'm at a loss here. I don't know what else to say. You got to help me out here.
I'm not a good vampire. I just always hated Dave.
Oh, that was fantastic. That was fantastic, because for a minute there, I did think the same thing Tim thought. Again, displaying how Tim is almost a reflection of the audience, because I'm like, oh man, he's gonna help save them. And it's like, no, he just didn't like Dave.
Yeah, just didn't like Dave.
Yeah.
And then it goes right back to him and human Tim doing their back and forth juggling, discussing what's going to happen next. Is Tim going to kill Andrew, or is Andrew going to kill or turn Tim? And they're like, Andrew's not going to.
Andrew's idea was to turn him first.
Yes. Right? And he said it didn't work because he bought a new set of golf clubs.
What bothered me about that scene is that we never saw what they ultimately decided on. We just see that, like, Tim showed up and Andrew has his little, I want to say sequel bait scene at the end, but clearly that wasn't meant to be sequel bait. It was just meant to be, like, again, another step in the parody of it.
Yeah.
But I would have honestly loved a scene where it's just like, so what do we do? How about nothing? Yeah, sure. Video games on Friday? Like, you know what I mean? Like, just show a scene where they're completely just like, yeah, okay, we're cool with this on both sides.
Well, I don't think you could really end that conversation on a joke better than the conversation itself. I think it might actually take something away from it. So I'm okay with them not showing the resolution there. But obviously the decision was made that neither's going to do anything.
I know, but I wanted to see it because I wanted it to be, like, I wanted them to further normalize it. Like, it's just like, yeah, you know, I don't want to kill you, you don't want to turn me or whatever, and it's just like, that's cool, let's just go on with our lives. I don't know. It's again, it's a small thing, but I'm kind of grasping at straws here to try and find things to complain about, because,
well, there's nothing really to complain about. So maybe we should just let it go for now. Let people who might have listened to this episode and not have seen the movie actually go out and watch it, because even though we talk a lot about it, it's not a movie where you have to worry about spoilers. You just sit and watch acting, great comedy writing, and a really fun story.
I'm with you on that this movie doesn't suffer from spoilers. Like, I watched it twice in 3 days for this review, and I probably enjoyed it just as much the second time, even though at that point I knew everything that was going to happen.
Yeah, it's great. Everything's just timed so perfectly and edited incredibly well that it's a really enjoyable film. You can revisit it so many times.
It's a quick
so
watch
happy.
Too. Like,
it is. It's just under an hour and a half.
It's an hour and 25 approximately, and that's taking into account intro and credits. So you probably shave off 5 to 10 minutes for that. It's a incredibly quick watch. Very enjoyable to watch by yourself, but I think would be heightened even more by watching it with friends that you can quote it with.
Oh, definitely. It's definitely a really fun, have a beer with a friend, or even just have a friend or two over, sit back, kick your feet up, and just get ready to laugh.
So Ben.
Yes.
Did this episode go the way you were expecting? Did you think that this was going to be my reaction to the movie?
Dude, I have so many notes here trying to, like, combat what I was expecting you to complain about. So, no, this did not go as I had expected.
Well, there's a pleasant surprise. This is going to be one of our shortest episodes, but it is what it is. Why don't you tell us what we're going to be talking about next time?
Well, next time our conversation is definitely not going to be going in this same direction, as we'll be talking about 1987's Stepfather.
Dear Lord, we thank you for our dear friends, our wonderful home. But most of all, Father, we thank you for bringing us together as a family. Amen.
Amen.
When I came here, I was a stranger. But I've never felt more at home anywhere in my life. I have beautiful friends. I have a wonderful new family. This is as good as it gets.
You never talk about your past. Past is important.
It didn't even exist until I met you. Hi, honey.
That's my girl.
We have to talk, honey.
About what?
About what is happening to our family.
I'm taking care of it.
It isn't our house anymore. It's his. There's just something about him. He scares me. I'm afraid of him.
He's your father now, and you'll respect him.
He's not my father. He's just some crazy creep.
I don't think we have to break up the family. Do we, Pumpkin? It's okay, sweetheart. I won't hurt you. Come out here now! Get out here! It's all a game, Steph, huh? Ollie Ollie home free.
And there we have it. Now, before we go, just want to mention that we do record these episodes a couple weeks in advance, so this is going to be a little delayed. But a couple of weeks ago, something pretty cool happened that we're very happy about and want to just send out a sincere thank you.
Yeah, to the guys at OSW Review, thank you so much for putting us out there and promoting us on your Twitter. We really appreciate it. It means the world to us. And anybody listening, please check out the YouTube channel, check out the podcast. It's so much fun.
Well, there we have it. Until next time, have a good one, guys.
All the best, guys.